All right, let's get going. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon to some of you. Welcome to our weekly GraphQL meeting. I think Valery might be absent today. He's got some other things, but he was kind enough to provide an agenda for us. So what that looks like is we've got several things. One, we'll talk about releases that are coming up that are in the picture post 230. We've got a presentation about my downloadable products, and then a couple things from Mr. Lewis here about so a feature that has to do with the endpoint to retrieve last order information, and then adding StoreName to the StoreConfigData. So that's our agenda for the day, and I'll kick us off with a little bit about how we think about our tasks and work that's outstanding in the GraphQL track that's post 2.3 release. So let me share my screen here. All right, so everyone should be familiar with this is our backlog that's modeled as issues. We'd always used ZenHub as kind of a layer on top of GitHub repo to transform our working space into basically an agile board. So everyone should be familiar again with kind of this view of the board where we have different swim lanes allocated to the new issues as they come in. Then we mark some of them as needing grooming, and we can handle those as needed depending on the priority of items. And again, we never mind doing one-off sessions if somebody's interested in tackling some of these issues. As a general rule of thumb, they're more complex and probably more involved than just trivial tasks. So you'll see, as a rule of thumb, medium and large issues in this column. And then once they're groomed, they're moved to ready to start, or some issues are ready to start right away because they're simpler and it's easier to understand what needs to be done. We've got a column for investigation here. When somebody takes something into work, we move it into here if they need a little bit more time to either perform a spike or do some sort of technical investigating. Then our in progress column that has 23 issues currently. That's a lot. I'm not sure that all of them have active development associated with them, and we should probably be better about returning some of these items if they're stalled to be up for grabs again for other people. But we'll get there as we go. And then we've got a review/QA column, which this is the stuff that's been mostly completed, merging in progress, and then all the stuff that's been closed and done, and we've got 50 plus issues here. So when we were thinking about the future roadmap of GraphQL and where we wanted to go, we'd always spoken about completing the checkout and focusing on the end-to-end flow for a shopper who can browse products. They can explore different products, get on the product detail page, add to cart, and then go through the checkout steps needed to complete an order. So a good view of that is through our mind map here. This is kind of a top-level visual view of the totality of scope for GraphQL. Let me collapse this here. Basically, it breaks down the total work that we would like to get done in GraphQL space into kind of areas, and we've talked about these before. You see performance here, improvements for framework, a few items on security, but the majority of the work that's still outstanding is still yet to be done is in coverage, right? And coverage is broken down further into different areas like product coverage, category coverage. URL resolver is a different one, some stories on CMS, and as we move up, we see a lot of stories on my account, and this is basically everything that you see that a registered shopper would see in their my account storefront area where it's self-serve operations like creating returns or RMAs or looking at their past orders, reordering those, changing or managing your address book, things like that. And then as we keep going, the top item here is checkout coverage, and that is further broken down into certain operations that a customer can do on their cart, and in addition to that, managing basically payments on their cart, managing shipping methods, as well as shipping billing address too. And then, these cart operations, we've marked certain ones that have been previously worked on as completed or, partially completed. But this is really where we want to focus development of the future releases. So the first place that we want to get to is a ability of only using GraphQL operations to complete checkout end to end, right? And there's certain big pieces missing in order for us to be able to do that. So this is where we'd like to focus. And what we've done for ourselves to be able to focus on those things is we've started using milestones on issues. And what you'll see is, let's see, if I open one of these guys from the board, you'll see a milestone field here on the right, and some of the issues have been tagged for 231, you'll notice. And that's just the next sequential release post 230. And currently, the state is that we've taken a pass at most issues that are involved and that are outstanding still to be solved for completion of checkout. We mark them as 231, and we put them. A good way to view a report of those issues is to go to down here to reports, and we can look at an overview and see what all kinds of reports are possible. It's several different ones. What we've been considering recently is the ability to do burn down charts, and what was missing for us to be able to do burn downs is really estimates in level of effort kind of scoring for these stories. For those of you who are familiar with our board, you guys know that we've always marked issues as small, medium, or large. Again, we've talked about these labels a lot. But now what you'll start seeing is these estimates in what we call story points, very standard practice in agile software development. We try to mark them. Basically, it's not a reflection of how long it will take. It's a reflection of relative size or complexity in relation to all other stories that we have on the board. So we've had Valeri went through and scored a bunch of these that we're, again, particularly interested in for 231 release, and marked them for, gave them a estimate in story points, and that's what these round numbers are. And now what that allows us to do is kind of forecast the work based on relative dates. No one has exact dates yet for releases, but we just know that assuming we have a few weeks to work on 231 scope, how much potentially work can we take on? Hope that makes sense. And so to help us visualize this, again, to come back to the reports and go to some of these things that are available here, if you click on this burn down report, which is the one that I want to focus on, you will see, if we select release 231, you'll see the total scope. So what this includes is issues that we have been merging into 231 for the last few months, actually, since about mid-September. We've cut off a branch, and all the issues that we've been merging since then did not make it into 230, obviously, but they have been accumulated into this 231 release. And then in addition to those issues that have been merged, we have, like I've been saying, marked a bunch of other issues that are still outstanding to be solved that we'd like to attempt to solve for 231. Mainly, again, shipping stories, payment stories, the placing the actual order, mutation, things like that. Besides those specific stories, again, that we want to call out for 231 release, there are a bunch of stories in here that have been in progress. So I'm a little hesitant to stop work on those or ask our contributors to stop work on issues that they're currently have in progress. So I think the best course of action here is to allow people to kind of complete the stories that they want to complete, even though they may not be directly relevant to the scope we want to get done for 231. However, we will start asking our community to basically pick stories from this list that are marked for 231 only, and concentrate on those. If you keep scrolling down on this page, what you'll see too is, like I said, the issues that have been already completed and merged. You see there's a lot here. I don't know if it gives me a count, but there's quite a bit that we've been able to close and merge in the past couple of months. This is the outstanding scope. From here, again, this may not be 100% accurate, and as you see on the burndown chart, what it tells us is, given the dates that we're currently guessing and given the scope that we currently have here, we've got a little bit more than technically we should be able to handle, right? And because of that, we've been throwing some of these issues that are currently assigned to this release. We've been postponing them or assigning them to the next subsequent release, that one being 232. And actually, we can switch our scope here to 232. I think we don't have any dates defined, and that's probably why it can't really tell us anything, but you can see that already the scope is starting to take shape here for 232. Mainly, it's things that we don't consider first priority, that are outside of that checkout experience, but they will start kind of accumulating here. And of course, this being a community project, we're always open to feedback about which items that we've picked and which items we've currently assigned to 232. If you see something that's, for whatever reason, maybe more urgent or critical for certain applications, we're obviously open to that dialogue with the community. This is just, it seems pretty straightforward that the first thing we'd want to do with GraphQL is to enable that checkout experience for shoppers. I'm going to pause here and just ask you guys if there's any questions, if I confused you in any way, or if if anyone has any other comments or suggestions about how we proceed with this work in our track.
Hello, I have one question. I already put it in the chat. As here shown, it says February the 1st. Is that probably the next release date of 2.3.1, or is that maybe a different date?
So no, like I said, we won't know the exact dates for a long time. This is kind of an educated guess for when development will wrap up. And so what that means is, past that point, we will still have to go through a bunch of testing iterations and regression and basically stabilization period of time, which will also be unknown. So we can only guess that past sometime in February we'll do a code freeze for scope, and then we'll do a period of stabilization like we always do, and then the release will be will be viable only after we feel good about the quality of the code. Does that make sense?
Cool. Yes, thank you for your answer.
Absolutely. Any other questions here on the phone? Awesome. So the next action items for us here internally are really to obviously cut more scope here. We're going to be moving some of these stories that are currently assigned to 231. Obviously, we need to trim this down more if we believe that the dates are correct. So more of these stories will fall out into 232. However, if you're looking for new functionality or new areas to help with, obviously this checkout flows are the most critical. So it should be a safe bet that if you're working on something that will help advancement in those areas, then it would be great for 231. But basically, the main takeaway is that we've introduced estimates, we've introduced milestones. Now it should be kind of a better, more clear picture of how we're progressing and where we're going, and what kind of progress have we made? Are we ahead? Are we behind? So hopefully this kind of helps transparency and clarity on the entire project.
One more question.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Story points, are they estimation of how many hours you think you need, or is it more the difficulty level?
It's more a reflection of basically relative size to other stories.
Okay.
We don't translate them directly to an amount of time because that's
No, okay.
that's kind of dangerous, and it really makes the picture very unclear. But normally, yeah, the way to think about it are just relative size compared to other stories. So a story that's marked as a 3 should be about 3 times as complex to tackle as a story that's marked as a 1. And I think likely with time, right now we've got a mixture of things. We've got the size labels and we've got the estimates. Likely, as time goes along, we're going to be getting rid of the size labels and only kind of reference the size and story points. But even so, I just want to point out that the relative complexity has been scored by one person, and potentially they're not always going to be perfect either. So we're open for discussion. It was nice that the same person went through and marked all of them, because at least they're consistent, from one perspective. We didn't have very many people chime in and with different opinions. So at least there's a consistency bar. But again, these could change potentially with more discussion, with more grooming, with clarification of acceptance criteria and use cases, et cetera, just like in a normal agile development cycle.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I've talked a lot. I'm going to stop now and move on to the next item on our agenda, which was the demonstration of downloadable products by our friends from Atwix.
Yeah, thank you. Do you hear me well?
Yes, we do.
Oh, that's great. I'm still not familiar with the new software for communication.
BlueJeans, yes.
Oh, it looks like that I need an additional extension to share my screen. Can we move to the next presenter, please, while installing the extension?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Let's shuffle this around. Lewis, do you want to try to share your screen? See if we can get you presenting first.
Yeah, sure. Let's take a look. I have created 2 GraphQL endpoints. No, actually 1. If you take a look at the StoreConfig, if you take a look at PWA Studio, you're still seeing, or you're just seeing one screen, right?
Yeah, we're seeing your screen with the schema on it.
Yeah, what I've added is the name, but it's not the store name of the model, but it's the store name which is used in the configuration. Because if you have like a store switch, which you want to use the language code, that is the one which is on the store model saved. But if you want to show it like in the copyright footer, it's the name which is set in the configuration. So if we take a look at the resolver, it didn't actually change, but in a deeper level, the name which is saved here is the one based on the configuration. So as I explained, it is not the name on the model. So it's not the basic store name, because that one you can use for your store switch. This is really to display the correct name in the copyright in the footer if you're using PWA Studio. So the other one is...
Hey, just one comment on that, Luz.
Sure.
Since there is some ambiguity as to which name is actually selected, I would want to make sure that that's reflected in the doc snippet.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, because
yeah,
it says
yeah.
So I
So
would
it's
just make it more specific to reflect exactly where that's getting pulled from.
And probably the names is filled in schema as well.
So you mean like it has to be here the the config name or something like that?
Yeah, just to have maybe like more clear naming for it as well.
Yeah, what I thought was like, let's add them both. So the normal name and then like this. So you have the name of the configuration and the normal name. Maybe that's a better, and then of course the description has to be also adjusted. But is that more like you think? Or
Do we have different names?
yeah, you have like the name. Should I take Magento? How can I share a different screen?
That's a good question.
Got it. Okay.
Oh, nice.
Now you see my database.
Yes.
You have like here the store information, which is the configuration, but you also have the store table in which you have the name, which is relevant for if you have a store switch, but that is like a language switch. And if you want to display beneath the name of your company, that one is the one in the configuration. So it's like the store name compared to a store view name. That's actually the difference.
Okay, and what's the path of the config config variable? It was store information name. Okay.
Yeah. So that's like the global company name which you display in the footer normally. So if you go back to PHP Storm, there you can also see it in the data provider. 1 second. Of things above this. You can see it here. Here is the path also used. This is the basic path. So it's really the store information name. Okay. The other thing I've added is a second pull request, which is I will show you why I've done this. In PV Studio you have the order ID. When you place the order, you get the actual entity ID and not the increment ID. So what I've added is a GraphQL code to retrieve the order information of the last order of the current session. So normally you have the last real order ID. That one is going to be returned. It's explained here. In the schema, I used the normal customer order because the data is exactly the same, but there's a different resolver for it. So if you open the resolver, what does it? It gets the last real order ID, which is the increment ID, and with that I retrieve the order and the information which is necessary for the schema. And that one is called within in a different pull request for PV Studio.
Yeah, so there is actually one problem because our GraphQL should not be stateful, and usually what happens, you should pass all required arguments in request, in query. So in this case, it can be identified based on your token, for example, but we should not take anything from session. So you can potentially say, I know who you are based on your token, and then like we can identify customer ID, and then based on that customer ID we can try to find latest order, but we definitely cannot use session because you can also use, I'm not sure like how you did authentication here, but probably you used cookies, I assume, but you can also use tokens, and in case of tokens I'm not sure what will happen because session I believe is not available in that case. Like it's not shared between requests.
But it's when you place the order, then it's set to your current session. So it's actually the same session.
Yeah, but like in the APIs, we cannot rely on session. Like in GraphQL and in REST, we cannot do GraphQL same stuff as REST. We cannot rely on session.
So then you want, yeah, okay.
So yeah, so you can actually, I believe you can get order increment ID only for registered customers. If you placed an order as a guest, you will not get order increment ID, correct?
When you place an order as guest, you can't get your increment ID. Yeah, that's why you need the last increment ID of the current session. Yeah.
Sorry, so are you trying to get order increment ID for the guest right now as well?
Yeah.
Because I believe this is not a behavior of default Magento, like Luma theme. You cannot do that. If you place order as guest, you will not get order increment ID.
If you actually place an order in the Luma theme, you will get the last increment ID, which is retrieved through this functionality normally. But if you and that one is displayed through the theme. But if you take a look,
yeah, sorry. So you say that you will get order increment ID even for guest users, not only for customers?
Yeah. When you place the order in the success page, there you get the order increment ID. Like this order is placed for increment for you with the ID. It's actually the same message as shown here, but only like this. Also in the Luma team.
Okay, so if it works like this, but we can try to figure out how to implement, but we cannot rely on session like anyway. We need to.
Yeah, we need to probably come up with a different approach. So what I was thinking as you were talking is that potentially when you place whatever operation that we have for placing the order, maybe that's what should be returning as a return object, like some of these fields that you need to display the order confirmation page.
Yeah, but that actually is what I've tried before, which isn't the right approach because then you can break other functionalities.
I suppose
So
we can
always when you place.
I believe we just submitted this pull request just yesterday, right?
Yeah, true.
So we can review it and we can see what options we have. But
yeah,
in general, you can just see how we do, let's say, checkout flow for guest users. We never operate this session. Instead, we use card ID, like hashed card ID, and we pass it around between requests. And there is no like state between requests. So if you basically do one request and then do second request doesn't depend on first request. Like if first request created card and then you get this card ID, you provide it in second request. And what we've done here, basically, your second request will return different results. Like you send same request, but you will get different results depending on like previous requests. And this is basically like state persistence between different requests, and this is what we definitely cannot do in APIs. So we should come up with something similar to card ID hash, but with order. So we just need to see like where to do that. But we are going to have eventually place order endpoint. I believe we already have it, right? Or we don't?
Yeah, but that is the place order is currently a REST call. And in that REST call, the entity ID is returned, and that can be changed to increment ID because other functionalities depend on that.
So we're not talking about REST right now. Like if in REST ID is probably not how it would like work for you, but in GraphQL when we implement, like, you know that GraphQL is supposed to replace REST for storefront scenarios, and in GraphQL definitely can return like whatever we need.
Okay.
And when we implement this place order mutation, you will just get order increment ID in response to that mutation.
Okay.
And we can also give you opportunity to ask for like additional data. It may be not only order increment ID, maybe you will want to render something else.
The items. Yeah, so that's exactly what I was saying. Sorry, I wasn't explaining it very well. I was just kind of thinking that it should be the responsibility of that future place order mutation, and as you know, it will have certain fields that you can query or you can request as part of that mutation to be returned to you, and this increment ID could be one of those fields. It's just, again, this hasn't been implemented yet, but this is good notes to add to probably acceptance criteria of that story. To think of this use case basically. So it's definitely something that we want to keep in mind for the future.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So in REST, I'm just thinking like how you can work around that for your use case at the moment. I don't think you can do it in any way if you don't introduce custom endpoint, because when you get order ID, as a guest, you will not be able to get that order information by ID because it is basically like security issue. So the only way to do it, if we somehow introduce another hash like we do for card ID and ask guests to operate. So it looks like it was just a miss when order placement REST API was implemented. It was a miss from like flow point of view, because it was not predicted that it will need it for guests as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so if it's not too critical for you to wait, let's say for 2.3.1, I assume that it will be available as part of 2.3.1, and we will definitely make sure that we include order increment ID in response. And if it's critical, you can just go and implement your own endpoint, REST endpoint, via custom extension.
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. Thanks, Lewis. We'll leave more feedback on the PR since they're very fresh off the press, so we can work in the scope of those tickets. Cool. Thank you very much. Let's come back to the item of my downloadable products. Yara, you ready?
Yeah, thank you. I have managed to install the extension. Hope helps. Okay, do you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Great. So my implementation is about the following issue. It's a possibility to show downloadable products purchased by a customer. So in my account section, the separate grid with information about the downloadable products, and also on this screenshot here is no link for download the product, but if you are able to download some information from purchased order, you will have links here. And for providing this possibility, I have introduced a new endpoint, a new query in scope of downloadable GraphQL module. And actually, to execute this query, it's enough to be logged in. It's to provide your token in headers. And once you request this query, it returns an array of type customer downloadable product. And this type includes the exact fields like we have here in this table. So it's order increment ID, order date, status, URL of the downloadable link, and remaining downloads. And unfortunately, I have broken my GraphQL instance right before the demo. It's classics, but I have like the request from my working instance, and it looks like the following one. So in result, you will have all information you need. I am still working on this pull request, so maybe we need the date to be formatted somehow. But in general, everything works as expected. So we have enough data to display the same table or grid within a scope of BW application. And yeah, that's it. If you have any question, please let me know.
Cool. Yeah. Now we just need to, build the ability to buy downloadable products, and then we'll be set.
Yeah, sure. I believe it will happen sooner or later.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I think we moved in the spirit of prioritizing the getting to the end-to-end flow first. I think we moved out a bunch of stories for support of different product types to be added to cart and then to be checked out. So we currently have, I think, simple and configurable, and we basically moved all the rest of the product types to 232 scope in favor of prioritizing, the shipping payments and order placement. And once we've got that, probably with basic shipping methods, like the static shipping methods first, and then the static, payment methods as well, then we can start iterating and actually adding, more complex live payment methods and credit card processing and live carriers and all that. So that's kind of the idea to move forward for now.
Great.
Cool. Very cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I think that brings us to the end of the agenda. Anyone else have any comments or thoughts?
I just wanted probably to give one more update regarding how we actually take global state data from within Resolver. You probably noticed that if you need to have access to current store information, you usually use Store Manager for that. You inject Store Manager in your Resolver constructor and then just use it to get store. And I believe our overall direction is at the moment in Magento, not just GraphQL, but in Magento, to avoid global state as much as possible. And for this purpose, we need to pass as much information as we can via arguments. And it also affects how we write resolvers. And I just created before the demo a story, or maybe a small task to change our approach. And what it means, we will just take information from headers as to which current store is, and we probably identify the object of store, and then we put it to context, which is part of resolver interface. So we are not going to request Store Manager in constructor anymore, but instead you will get access to store information via context object, which you get as argument of resolve method in resolvers. And we already do this for user context. So we have user context object, which actually gives information as to who current user is and what his ID is. And we already use GraphQL resolver context for storing this information. And if we have any future global state that we want to pass around the application, we also need to follow the same approach. So if in case you're writing any new resolver and you need access to Store Manager, you will have to get it from context as soon as we implement this small feature on framework level that it's available via context, because currently it's not available via context and framework should put it to context first. But this just heads up, and if you have any concerns, just let us know before we implemented this.
Very cool. All right. Well, with that, we will wrap up for the day. Thank you, guys. Thanks to everyone who joined. Thanks especially to the ones who presented today. And we will be in touch in Slack. And we'll see you all guys next week.
Yeah.
Thank
you. Have
See
a
you.
nice day.